Hello, Helen.
Hello.
I am so excited to have you here.
I'm delighted to be here.
And it's actually super exciting that we are having this interview in Money Supermarket where we first met.
It is indeed. Lovely Money Supermarket.
So thank you, Money Supermarket, for giving us the space to have this interview done today. And Helen is co-founder of AmazingIf.
I am indeed.
Of the concept of the Squiggly Careers that we're going to go tap into it in a second. And from my point of introduction, I remember when we first met in here, actually, when Money Supermarket was looking for how we can support colleagues with career development, and we were in what we would call a sales meeting, I guess.
Yeah.
And I remember there were two things you've said in that meeting that really resonated really well from me, because obviously I am all about diversity and inclusion. And those two things were, number one, how you came up with the concept of AmazingIf. And I remember when you were saying that you and Sarah, your co-founder, that you were reflecting back on your career and how you came about, how squiggly they were. But also you've mentioned that you quite early on with Sarah were identified as a top talent, as company do that. And therefore you went through that extra courses and development. And I think you've said that, wouldn't that be amazing if everyone had this chance to enjoy the work and have that career development? And I felt, yes, careers for everyone, absolutely. So and it's very clear when you listen to your podcast, when you look at your resources on your website, that I recommend everyone to go if you don't know about it yet, because it is all about that, isn't it? That I think you're on a mission, and you can really feel it and see it, that you're on a mission here, and that's amazing.
Thank you.
And the second thing you've said that really resonated well with me as well, you've mentioned that you and Sarah, you're very different, that you, and Sarah does talk about it in Squiggly Careers podcast as well, that she's more what you would say introvert, you are more extrovert, and you kind of bring it into how does it manifest itself, but importantly for the training delivery, that you tailor your style to different people. And that was, again, yes, please, I mean, it is acknowledgement that we have different ways of learning, different ways of acknowledging. So what is Squiggly Careers, and what's AmazingIf?
Squiggly Careers is sort of the new normal for the shape of work, and I guess if you think where we've come from, we talk about it being much more ladder-like. So the traditional careers were a bit more hierarchical, they were more linear, they were a bit more predictable. If you then look at the careers that we're now all operating with now, they are much more unpredictable, which means that tools that we used to have before, we used to have career plans, they are not so appropriate in Squiggly Careers because of all this unpredictability. Instead of plans, we need to really think about possibilities, for example. Squiggly careers are much more fluid, whereas those staircase careers, they are much more structured, they are much more rigid. Squiggly careers have got fluidity in terms of where people are working, what they're working on. There's much more change in the organisations, and that means that we need people who are adaptable, who have got a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset, so that they can move as all that fluidity is happening. And the last thing with a squiggly career is they're very unique, they're very individual. In that kind of staircase world, you had a lot of people climbing the same ladders, climbing the same staircase. It was competitive. It was, there's a lot of comparison going on, which causes a whole load of issues. In squiggly careers, if you've got the right skills, you have the opportunity to have a very unique and personalised career. Maybe you're working in a certain way in terms of the hours. Maybe you've got a plural career because you've got side projects on. Maybe you're freelancing and you're doing corporate work. You've got to have a high level of self-awareness, which is a lot of what we help people with. But if you know what you really value and what you're great at, and you've got a network of people who can help you to activate all that insight, then squiggly careers are full of opportunities.
Yeah, from the way you've described that, from one hand we have the opportunities, and I think that in the context of diversity, it really is the place for different skill set, different ways of doing things, different way of thinking, which is very valuable. But on the other hand, it's not really that rosy, because you need to kind of, and you said that you need to be adaptable and you need to have certain set of skills. If you were kind of described from the individual perspective, what are those kind of, and you're very practical, so another thing I love about your podcast, what are like 3 or 4 things that they have to be focusing on to really live to that potential of the opportunities?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because we always say that so Squiggly Careers are the new normal, and they are full of opportunity, but that doesn't mean that they're really easy. And if you take what's happening in the workplace at the moment, there is more need than ever for people to take ownership for their career. So you have Squiggly Careers, the new normal, loads of change going on in the organisation, more important than ever for you to take ownership. But what do you take ownership of then? Where do you start? Very much where we play. We're like, we can help you with that. So I think I can go through the 5 skills. So we have the 5 core skills to succeed in a Squiggly career. So the first one is your values. If you know your values, you know what motivates and drives you, and you can make decisions in your career. And Squiggly Careers mean you are going to be making many more decisions because there are many more opportunities, many more change happening. If you know your values, you can make decisions based on what fundamentally makes you happy. You can potentially resist the allure of shiny objects, which are salaries, brands, amazing managers, all of which are good, and we're not saying discount it, but you need to make balanced and informed decisions based on what truly makes you happy. That's what knowing your values really helps. So that's the first thing. Strengths, that is knowing what you are great at. The more you can understand what you're great at, and the more you can communicate that in terms of the impact it creates for organisations, the more productive you'll be and the happier you are in work. So it's sort of like it's a win-win for your company, it's a win-win for you. But lots of people don't know what they are great at, or, which is the third skill, they're not confident enough to talk about it.
Exactly, that's the one. That's the big.
Yeah. I'm just like,
I'm
that's
nodding
what
here.
I resonate with.
Here. Can't see me when I'm nodding here.
So confidence is the third core skill that we help people with. We do a lot of work around confidence gremlins. A lot of people are held back by their own assumptions about what they think other people think about them. And it all sounds very, sometimes you think, well, I can't believe that thought is holding you back, but it's fundamental. It's fundamental to their future. And so we help people to get underneath their thinking. And what we say, we help you to cage your gremlins so you can move forward. The fourth thing is network. Not everyone loves the concept of network.
No, but you put it in a beautiful way that just puts the barriers out, I think. So I let the people helping people, isn't it?
Very much so. So we talk about networks are just about people helping people. We always talk about the first thing you've got to understand is what have you got to give people? Let's start with is it insight, knowledge, passion, time? We all have something to give. Maybe you love writing posts on LinkedIn. Maybe you are really good at copywriting. Maybe you're great at website design. We all have something, and at the very least, we probably all have some time that we can give, or just the ability to listen to somebody else. So if you can find a way to package that thing you've got to give and give it intentionally to people, then you start to make a network more active. You've also got to be really specific about what it is you want to get. So I hear a lot of people talk about I want a mentor. Like, well, let's go beyond that statement and think about what is it you specifically need and who might you go to. So it's about being intentional, but really people helping people. Start with what you've got to give, and we help people with lots of things there. And the last thing's future. So I talked about staircase-like careers. You could have these career plans, and I have had some of these in my past, which predict every 2 years exactly what move you're going to make. But things are changing too frequently now, and a lot of the jobs that we are going to be doing in the future, we don't even know what those jobs are yet. There are so many exciting opportunities for us, but that means that we don't want to really rigidly focus on a defined destination. We want to open ourselves up more, and so we want to think about our career possibilities, and we want to have a mindset of exploration rather than kind of rigid planning.
Absolutely.
And that's it. I say that's it, but that's the five core things that we think help people to succeed in a Squiggly career.
Yeah, no, that resonates so well with me, because when I look back on my kind of career, let's call it this way, it's a big word, isn't it?
It is a big word.
When you look at your career, what got me to HR, having being Polish, being an immigrant, and all those labels that I put on myself, because I've never felt anyone was kind of against me or what have you, but I had millions of gremlins in my head, but I didn't let them in, and playing to my values, to my strengths, I got my way into HR. But just to give you an example, one of them was what I've heard in organizations was foreigners are not being promoted in here, and that stops you from taking action, doesn't it? So I feel like this is a two-way process. What I've done, I started doing projects and work to my values, but also I had a manager who could see the potential in me and without them seeing that, without me doing something, they wouldn't have seen it, but with them trusting me and letting me do HR when they haven't had an experience in HR was massive game changer for me, but also for them.
Yeah.
What other skills do you think are responsibilities? And you've said about that, we have to take ownership of our careers. Is there like synergy, harmony, or how would you see the balance between what organization needs and individuals' needs? How would that play to each other?
So it's a really good point. So I think they do go hand in hand, and particularly the management side of things.
Yes, absolutely.
It's a really, really big part of it. So I think what we have learned is when we work with organisations, whilst we can equip people with the skills to succeed in a squiggly career, we can transform organisations when we also work with the managers.
Absolutely.
If it's just the individuals, it's great, but we can transform businesses if we kind of have both parts of it. Now that manager piece is really important, and I always think that management is a responsibility. It is not just a role.
Yeah.
A great manager has the ability to help somebody fulfill their potential now and in the future. A bad manager has the potential to be a dinner table story for years and years and years to come. And you know we don't want that. And we probably all had some of those, and we're probably all talking about some of those. But for us, we look at the difference between a growth mindset manager and a fixed mindset manager. So a fixed mindset manager, for example, they wouldn't hire for potential. They would almost have a job description, and they want someone that exactly met that job description, because they're not hiring to develop people, partly because in fixed mindset you don't necessarily believe that people can be developed. You know, people in fixed mindset, you're like, well, you've either got it or you've not. You either know it or you don't. And that's not the world of growth mindset. So a growth mindset manager understands that people can develop and that they can develop them. They have, you mentioned trust, they operate with high levels of trust, which we talk about a concept called psychological safety, which Amy Edmondson's done huge amounts of work there. And the highest performing teams have high levels of psychological safety. And so a growth mindset manager is able to create an environment where that safety exists for everyone. They also give fantastic feedback, and when I say fantastic feedback, I don't mean they're nice all the time. But they have, another term that's useful to look into is radical candor. They are able to give firm, fair, frequent feedback that helps people to be their best, and people know where they are, and they also get that from other people. So they create a culture where this feedback can thrive. They create a team of learning. Learning doesn't just have to come from HR or the learning and development, it can come from each other. There's so many organisations that we work with that have really innovative ways of unlocking everyone's knowledge so that they can share it with each other, rather than bringing people outside the company in. There's so many things.
Can you give us some examples?
Yeah, sure. So I used to work at Microsoft. We had a session once around side projects where people were sharing all the different things they did outside of work, and so that they could help other people. Things like, there was someone who was talking about a calligraphy thing that they did on the side, somebody else who had an observatory, and they were talking about that. ASOS, they have an amazing annual festival of learning, like a learning week, and they had people teaching each other basket weaving, just loads, all these sort of secret skills that we have that might not seem directly related to work, but what they do is they create a passion and an energy for learning, and they create creativity, and they allow people to be authentic at work as well. So we need to make learning fun and interesting, and find creative ways to kind of make it happen at work. So loads of organisations do brilliant stuff there. And I think the last thing is that managers operating as coaches. So what makes management hard a lot of the time is managers who feel that they have to know all the answers. That's a really hard way of doing management. But when managers operate as coaches, they can help other people get to their solutions through brilliant listening and really insightful questioning. They can help people to help themselves, which is such a cliche, but it really works, and it's a different skill set entirely, and it takes some confidence as a manager to do that, because you don't have some of the same instant rewards you get when you feel like you've solved a problem, or I've done great there, I've given them the answer, and it's not quite as rewarding in the short term, but it's a really meaningful skill. So that's what we do. We can help organisations to transform if we can help individuals have the skills to succeed in a squiggly career, and create managers who've got a growth mindset approach to how they manage.
Absolutely. And I was so happy that I saw your last podcast was on how to be the first time manager.
Yes, yeah.
With 10 plus 0 advice on how it's really, really good podcast. So if you are a new manager and a manager who is, wants to learn, I think it was really useful even if you're not a new manager, because that was good set of takes to manage people. So from my experience in HR and working with managers, they very often want to do the right thing, but they don't know how does it look like, and they feel a little bit, especially in the context, maybe not especially, but in the context of diversity, they sometimes feel like, is it all right to say, is it not all right to say? But I feel like even you helping them by having this conversation, is people helping people, even if you put it in that frame, it kind of helps them get the conversation going in the right direction, I think.
And I think the diversity point as a manager is really interesting, because you're probably going to say something wrong at some point, and you just probably are, because maybe you didn't know that or you weren't thinking. But if you are willing to learn and open to receive feedback, and just okay with being vulnerable, then people can give you that feedback, and someone can say, Helen, when you made that statement, I didn't feel it was very inclusive and I wanted to let you know. And what I can say is, thank you so much for giving me that feedback. I wasn't aware of it. I'm going to not say that in the future. I would appreciate you giving me some more feedback on how you think I'm coming across. But it's if you can create an environment for feedback to come both ways, then I think making mistakes is okay. It's when we think people can't make mistakes and I have to be perfect all the time and I've got to know everything that we go back towards fixed mindset cultures and we don't create the space for other people to take risks and try, and it be okay to keep learning and growing and maybe failing along the way a little bit.
That reminds me of Brené Brown that I discovered thanks to you. Thank you so much. And on that note, power to LinkedIn, because I posted something on LinkedIn about being brave, and you just gave me in the comment the recommendation of the book. So LinkedIn is an amazing tool, but that's a side note. She talks about dare to lead, obviously, but I sometimes feel like the first step is permission to lead, because especially I sometimes felt like managers were coming to me to permission to lead, almost like, is that okay to have this conversation? They get a little bit paralyzed by those things, but no, you have the permission to lead, dare to lead. And Brené Brown really well explains how to do it and how to be more vulnerable and all the good stuff.
I love that quote, and I know it doesn't work for everyone, but that maybe I'll caveat it. Sometimes it's better to seek forgiveness than to ask for permission. And I think
very good one.
If you operate within like ethical, moral, sensible boundaries, I think that actually you can save time, try things out, push ideas forward, if you're not always thinking I need to always ask permission for that all the time.
Lovely. And just staying for a second with the managers, you've said that one of the 5 skills to have is knowing your values and knowing your strengths.
Yes.
How managers can either help individuals see the strength, and should they be doing that? And maybe on the other hand, is there anything to look for, or any skill in manager to have this ability to notice person?
So I think managers got to know about themselves first of all. So it's very easy as a manager to be like, all my team need to go on this course, all my team need to know this, but I think you've got to know it yourself to begin with. Managers can be brilliant strength spotters. So what that looks like is me saying to my business partner Sarah, I might say, I saw you at your best yesterday when you had that really clear conversation on the phone. And sometimes when we are all caught up and we're busy all the time, we're going from meeting to meeting, we might not take the time to reflect on what did I do well today. We advise people to do that. But actually a manager can play a really, really strong role in strength spotting. And if you look at the research, what we need to do is we need to get more strengths-based feedback, because our brains sort of are wired to the negative. We have to balance that a little bit. So some managers might think, well, I always need to give balanced feedback. I always need to tell somebody one thing they're doing brilliantly and one thing that they're doing better. You don't. We don't need to do that. It's not to say you don't need to give them developmental feedback, but just give them the developmental feedback. And the next day or the next week, just give them some strengths-based feedback. You don't need to have this balanced conversation all the time. The research does say that we should be giving people more strengths-based feedback so they can focus more on doing the things that they're brilliant at. It makes them more productive and it makes them happier at work.
In your career, have you had a manager that really kind of identify your strengths, or was it always driven from you?
Yeah, I've definitely had managers that have really helped me to do that. I think earlier in my career, they probably almost took the lead for me. So I maybe wasn't aware or confident enough about what I was good at, and the fact that they were practically identifying it and then spotting opportunities that could match it, you know, they were transformative to my development. As I have progressed in my career and become more self-aware, I could probably be more specific about the feedback I was adding. So I might say, I know one of the things that I'm great at is making things happen. How can I do that here? When are you seeing me doing that most valuably here? So I could focus the feedback a little bit more. But in the earlier stages of my careers, it was those managers that were doing that for me that were so helpful.
Yeah. One of the other angles is, if I have my strengths and something they very value, you can almost job craft your role to incorporate that. And whilst being mindful that sometimes it might not be the priority, and then how you apply that, and if the organization lets you create that space to express yourself in that space.
I think when you're talking about your strengths, it's not enough to say, one of the things that I'm great at is curiosity, and I'd like to do it more because I think I'm good at it. It's not enough to do that.
Lovely.
What we really need to do is think about what's the value of that to your manager, your team, your organisation. So you might say, one of the things that I'm great at is curiosity. I think what we really need in the business at the moment is loads of new ideas, because we've got so many competitors coming into our marketplace, and I think I could apply that curiosity to do a weekly new entrance insight report, which I could present at the team meeting. What do you think about that? So in that way, I've identified a need of the business, I've created an idea of how I've connected my strengths to the business need, and I'm putting it up for discussion. It's those kind of conversations that help you to start crafting your role and putting your strengths into action more, even if it's not kind of a bullet on your job description. And don't get me started on job descriptions, but there are ways that you can craft your role, but you really have to do it in a way that benefits your organisation and not just you. I understand authenticity at work. So AmazingIf, we our starting point, we talk about these two sort of versions of yourself. There is your character and there is your persona. And your character is the sort of the true you, the unmanaged version of yourself. The persona is you with a bit of effort. So it's sort of the you want everybody to see, particularly at work. Now, ideally, those things, imagine two circles, character and persona here, ideally those things are very, very close together, overlapping. So when you show up at work, you're as much your true version of self, the unmanaged version of you, as possible. Accepting that there are days when we're going to have to put on a persona. If I'm going into a big meeting with an organisation, I'm going to try and read that organisation. I'm probably going to be a little bit more managed until they know me and I know them. The challenge in terms of authenticity is when those two things are far apart. So the real version of you is very different to the persona that you're showing up with at work, and that is happening for a long period of time. Personas, they take effort.
Exactly.
They take effort to be something that you're not all the time. You can do it for a day or a week in times of change, turbulence, all that kind of stuff. But month after month, year after year, this makes you unhappy. You become far removed from the person that you really, really are, and this is exhausting and unauthentic to maintain. So that's kind of our starting point, and to really understand that it's useful to just reflect on what are those two versions of me and what are they looking like today. Are they overlapped? Are they far apart? But it's also to work out when you know your values, so I can say, okay, my values are freedom, growth, energy and achievement. So how does that show up at work? The more I can show up with that at work and be in places that value that and value that authentic version of me, the more I can bring these two things together. So it's understanding character and persona, what they look like today, and then it's understanding your values and the extent to which you are fulfilling those at work and are in a place where that is possible, that you can start to make sure that they're overlapped.
Do you think there are lost opportunities if we kind of impose a persona on the person when it's not necessary? Definitely. I think sometimes it's easy to do for organisations because they have a need and they have people. And it's quite easy to be like, well, I've got this job to be done, and you're a person who could do that job. So I have a project, needs a project manager, I know you've got some of that capability, so that seems like a good fit. But actually that person might be better at other things, that just because that they might be good at it or have done it before, it might not be the thing that makes them really happy, and it might not be the thing that they could do the best. But this is complex. I don't think Squiggly Careers are easy for organisations to manage, and I wouldn't want to pretend that they are. You've got to, in order to really
take the advantages of people who are aware of their strengths, aware of their values, who are looking to craft their career. You have to have quite an agile organisation, and that means teams that can be brought together based on strengths rather than just based on who's in the team and available at that moment. And so organisations have got some work to do. We help organisations with that. It's not an easy thing, but when you've got a workforce who've got skills to succeed in a squiggly career, and when you've got an employer who has the ability to have almost like squiggly careers internally, so people can make horizontal moves, they can do secondments, they're able to do side projects, they can do work based on what they do best. And when you have that, that's where you have everything kind of firing, and people are engaged and happy and productive. But it's not easy. It's cultural, it's structural, and it's based on skills.
I like to ask my interviewees, what is your superpower? Because that's the power of diversity. You bring different things that are unique to you, or you're very passionate about. What's your superpower?
My superpower is that I am able to take lots and lots of information. I can distill lots and lots of information, and I can make it meaningful and actionable for people. And so whether that's, I can take lots of business information and data and reports and make that meaningful for the teams that work for me, or whether it's in AmazingIf, I will read and be curious about loads of insights and reports, and I can turn that into a 2-minute career tip for everyone every day. I sort of have this sort of synthesize and ability to make it meaningful and actionable for people, which I'm very thankful for, and I enjoy doing it. So it's
absolutely, exactly. Like who knows what other talents we have in organizations of that kind that you don't know about.
It's always helped me if I think about making that relevant to an organisation. I have particularly I like working in large, complex, big organisations. BP, Virgin, Microsoft, they're large organisations, lots of people, lots of information. So if I was talking to an employer about that sort of secret strength that I've got, I would make it relevant to them and talk about, I'm able to take complexity and ambiguity and create clarity for people. So I think it's just about understanding what's your super strength and why is it valuable here? Why does anyone care? And if you can do that, then it's you get to do what you're naturally good at in a way that maybe is quite unique to you and meaningful to your company.
What a lovely ending, I think.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you think it's worth adding? Or?
No, actually, just a couple of people to look at might be useful. So Carol Dweck's work on growth mindset is fascinating and meaningful. They are teaching people in schools about it. We need to be teaching people in organisations about it. So go look at that brilliant TED talk. I mentioned Amy Edmondson, so her work on psychological safety, one of the biggest differentiators of high-performing teams. Google's Rework site have got lots of different free tools on psychological safety. And I think Brené Brown, you mentioned, go look at Brené Brown. She's got a documentary on Netflix that's really good. Also lots of TED Talks and some fascinating books. So I think there would be some pointers for you to go after this.
And obviously AmazingIf website. And podcast, and follow you on Instagram and LinkedIn.
AmazingIf.com, Squiggly Careers podcast, and Helen Tupper on LinkedIn.
And actually, on that note, I loved the transformations we're making, even inside. I'm sure we can use the example of my supermarket. Me and Jodie, we loved those moments when some colleagues were saying, is it really for me? Should I be spending my 2 days? The classic, isn't it? Should I be spending my 2 days on the workshop? And they were coming, oh my God, this is amazing. And because you're so action focused as well, what is in for you that can take away straight away, start implementing. They were coming exciting about saying about things they've implemented, and usually there are little things that make a big difference, isn't it? So
we want to be a sort of like career development on demand. So we want you to know that you can come to AmazingIf, you can come back to tools that we might have taught you on a workshop, or that I'm there every day doing a career tip, or there's a podcast there to answer you. But if you have got, it's all about what we started with, about democratizing career development. It doesn't matter where you are in your career in terms of how long you've been working, or where you are in terms of levels or experience. If you have got a career question or a career challenge, we want to be the first point of call to help you, and then we will help direct you to lots of other places that we know can help you as well. But we, I guess, want to be that trusted voice of support for people in their careers.
And it's highly appreciated. The career tips and resources it makes my life in HR much easier because you have a question, there you go. There's this website AmazingIf, and I've said that the other day actually how. companies like yours or resources that are out there. Like there's so much stuff out there for free that you just why are you not using it if you don't use it? That especially early in my work in HR, when the confidence obviously is not quite there, the resources like that gave me so much confidence and helped me help others.
And you've got the passion and you've got expertise in HR that we might not have. We are just a curator of materials and insights and sort of like the voice of a community. So we know what challenges people are having at work, and we're just trying to put those solutions out for whoever, companies, individuals, HR teams, whoever can benefit from them. We are trying to put that out in a meaningful way.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Helen.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you.